Hey, what's up, y'all? Sati here, back with a mic that's whack, but that's okay. I'm not gonna let it get in my way, do. Here we are, and what's been up? Lots, I can imagine with y'all, lots with moi. Been reading books by Carlos Castaneda lately, the past couple years, and tell me what you think about this. Let's read together. Let's have some tea, have a read, and sit with we. So this book is The Second Ring of Power by Carlos Castaneda. And this is the 5th book in his line of publication. Is that correct? I was just looking that up. Intermission music. Intermission before we started. Okay, yes. This is the 5th. The Second Ring of Power, published in 1977. And I've read the previous books thus far: The Teachings of Don Juan, A Separate Reality, Journey to Ixtlan, Tales of Power. Now, when I was finished with Journey to Ixtlan, I had an urge to jump to The Power of Silence, and I sort of forced myself to read Tales of Power first. Definitely glad that I did. It was a great experience. I enjoyed the book immensely. But then as soon as I was done with that, I was like, yes, I could go to Power of Silence. So then I read Power of Silence. And then imagine my surprise when I happened to go and look at the books in order. And I completely skipped Second Ring of Power, Eagle's Gift, and then Fire from Within. Not only did I skip one book, I skipped 3 books. No one says, some I've read that you should read the books in succession. Should. I'm not shitting on anyone. However, that is something I'm doing to be impeccable because I do tend to bounce around, as I did. In any case, clock that, went back, and now I'm at the Second Ring of Power. And I've read chapters, they're not really labeled chapters, but chapters 1 and 2 thus far, which is how this idea was born, for I was reading the book. Very interesting, really fascinating. It's very story action, and I was reading it as such, and then I decided to read out loud. So I was just reading them out loud, and I was like, wow, if I'm doing this anyway, and I'm really bored with a lot of the channels for any sort of distraction, entertainment, why not get more active with my own? And this is an experiment. We'll see how it goes. So here's where we're going. I've already read chapters 1 and 2. I'm very anxious to read the rest of it. And I'm trying to look at the camera so it's like eye to eye, but I really want to look at the screen. And when you watch these videos, a lot of people are looking at the screen, not necessarily the eye part. So what looks more natural? Blah blah, whatever. Whatever. Pretty soon my eyes are gonna be in this book, so none of this matters. Blah 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 blah. Okay. So, I was reading out loud and thought, why don't I do this on the channel? And then, more blah, blah, blah. So, I have not read the other chapters. So, when I do those are going to be, I'm going to be in those stories with you. I'll be that way for 1 and 2 right now, because I love a good story, and imagination is key. But it'll be like the never-ending story, and we'll be reading it together. So if you have your copy of The Second Ring of Power, feel free to join me. If you don't, feel free to listen along. I don't think you'll be bored if you are unfamiliar with the text of Carlos Castaneda. And then if this is fun, what I'll likely do, depending on how it goes with the new chapters, I find that the Castaneda books for me, they have gone sort of back and forth. Like one book is just really, action story, action adventure. And there's action in them all, really, as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion. And then the next book will be kind of heavy one-on-one dialogue, Don Juan dropping knowledge bombs and paragraphs. And those take me a little longer to go through, and I'm highlighting. I mean, I probably highlight more of the book than not, but there's something in that act that I enjoy, and helps the information sink in. So anyways, that's what I do. With the stories, like what this seems to be thus far, I know in a way they're like parables, like there's deeper underlying info there, but it's not so verbal heavy. I guess it's explained through the action and the adventure. It's the lived experience, and I can feel it more in my body, whereas some of the other things with Don Juan and Carlos's questions, oh my gosh, Carlos. But I get it. I ask a lot of questions too. We'll see if, because I don't know how that'll be with the videos. I think it'll be interesting. I think I'll record these in, chapters or books or whatever, because it would take, several hours to just sit and read one book at a time. And I like to let the info sink in and let it percolate in my cells and let life bring the experiences to further sink in whatever info it's wanting to present to me for me to remember in that time. So that might work for you too. And maybe we can discuss the frequency. And then maybe we'll go to the next book together. The next one, Eagle's Gift. Or maybe I'll circle back and then go ahead and start from the beginning with the teachings of Don Juan, which I've read that book 3 times. But like back to back, it was kind of a task. And it was great then, but it would be fascinating to go back now after all this life been life and these books been read and anyways, we'll see. One book at a time, hey? Right? Let's get through this one first, Sati. Okay, shout out to Thrift Books. That's where we acquired this. Mama Jamma. So, yeah, let's have a sip of tea. Got my green tea in my prosperity mug. Been talking enough. Side note, I think looking at the eye is better the camera than the screen. Neither here nor there. And now, we invite you to sit back, relax, and join us for a reading of The Second Ring of Power by Carlos Castaneda. Contents. Preface. 1. The Transformation of Doña Soledad. 2. The Little Sisters. 3. La Gorda. 4. The Genaros. 5. The Art of Dreaming. 6. The Second Attention. Preface. A flat, barren mountaintop on the western slopes of the Sierra Madre in central Mexico was the setting for my final meeting with Don Juan and Don Genaro, and their other 2 apprentices, Pablito and Nestor. The solemnity and the scope of what took place there left no doubt in my mind that our apprenticeships had come to their concluding moment, and that I was indeed seeing Don Juan and Don Genaro for the last time. Toward the end, we all said goodbye to one another, and then Pablito and I jumped together from the top of the mountain into an abyss. Prior to that jump, Don Juan had presented a fundamental principle for all that was going to happen to me. According to him, upon jumping into the abyss, I was going to become pure perception and move back and forth between the two inherent realms of all creation, the tonal and the nahual. In my jump, my perception went through 17 elastic bounces between the tonal and the nahual. In my moves into the nahual, I perceived my body disintegrating. I could not think or feel in the coherent, unifying sense that I ordinarily do, but I somehow thought and felt. In my moves into the tonal, I burst into unity. I was whole. My perception had coherence. I had visions of order. Their compelling force was so intense, their vividness so real, and their complexity so vast that I have not been capable of explaining them to my satisfaction. To say that they were visions, vivid dreams, or even hallucinations does not say anything to clarify their nature. After having examined and analyzed in a most thorough and careful manner my feelings, perceptions, and interpretations of that jump into the abyss, I had come to the point where I could not rationally believe that it had actually happened. And yet another part of me held on steadfast to the feeling that it did happen, that I did jump. Don Juan and Don Gennaro are no longer available, and their absence has created in me a most pressing need, the need to make headway in the midst of apparently insoluble contradictions. I went back to Mexico to see Pablito and Nestor, to seek their help in resolving my conflicts. But what I encountered on my trip cannot be described in any other way except as a final assault on my reason, a concentrated attack designed by Don Juan himself. His apprentices, under his absentee direction, in a most methodical and precise fashion, demolished in a few days the last bastion of my reason. In those few days, they revealed to me one of the two practical aspects of their sorcery, the art of dreaming, which is the core of the present work, and the art of stalking, the other practical aspect of their sorcery, and also the crowning stone of Don Juan's and Don Gennaro's teachings, was presented to me during subsequent visits and was by far the most complex facet of their being in the world as sorcerers. Look, when I first read that preface, I'll be honest, I kind of glossed over it. Carlos is doing his Carlos thing. Oh, I had all these magical experiences, but was it real? Did it really happen? I was just and I was just ready to jump in. Had I paid more attention, I might not have been so surprised with what then transpired next.